Hi, welcome back to the channel. This week we're looking at a plugin that basically the audio world has gone nuts for over the last week or so. So I thought I'd check it out, and frankly, I don't get it. So let me explain my issues with it, and then hopefully you guys can correct me or tell me where I'm wrong, tell me where I'm using it wrong, etc. And it will also point out this is the second time that I've recorded this video. I did one yesterday, and after speaking to a few friends, and after sleeping on it, I thought, maybe I was a bit harsh, maybe I didn't get it. But to be honest, I'm even more confused today. So first up, we'll start in Ableton, and I'll show you just how bad the latency is. Now, I should point out, this is specifically mentioned in the manual. It does say that there's latency issues because of the way the plugin is designed, because of the way it does what it does, and also inherent latency issues within DAWs themselves. So the point being, I can't really blame Cableguys for this. So here I have 4 bars with just a snare. So let's play this back. Sounds okay, not really any latency. But now I'm going to grab, and I'm specifically going to use one with a long decay just to highlight the latency. Let's just drag this one on. Now this is a crash with quite a long tail. And when I play this back, listen to where this initial snare will hit. There, it's all the way, basically, I don't even know, what is it? It's 2 bars in, and it's just started to play. Let's do it again. Crash. And snare. So in the manual, it says to go up to here to options and enable reduced latency when monitoring. And to be honest, that doesn't really do much for me. In fact, it doesn't do anything. It's still 1 bar in. So let's use something that you're probably more likely to use in this plugin. A bit more of a shorter sample, like this clap here. It's still, I don't know about you, but there's no way I could work with that. If I'm trying to work in a certain section of the track and the transport isn't lining up with where the audio is coming, I know that this isn't uncommon, and with latency inducing plugins you get this, but it's a lot smaller than having a whole snare sample of a delay. And just to reiterate once again, I know full well this issue is Ableton, it's not from Cableguys, but the point remains, I don't care where the issue came from, it still causes a workflow problem. So let's close out of Ableton and let's check how it is in Cubase. Right, so here we are in Cubase. Once again, just a 2-bar loop with a simple snare on 1. Plays exactly where it should, perfect. Now let's drag in, once again I'm going to go with the crash. Drop that in, and let's have a look. So 2 comments. 1, the plugin latency works much better here. So you'll see the transport doesn't move at all until this sample has finished. And then the snare hits around here. And obviously that's doing exactly what it should because it's playing the crash to end where the sample ends, if that makes sense. So if this is, let's say, half a second long, it starts playing this sample half a second before the end here. So let's listen. So that's doing exactly what it should there. So much better in Cubase. Once again, let's grab something a bit more like what we would typically be using, although I'll come back to that comment. So that is a typical sound that you would use in this plugin. But as you can see, it's playing it way too early. It's playing it now. And the reason for that is because we have this massive tail on the end of the sample. And you might think, well, that's fine. I can just trim that tail. Nope. No, you can't. There is no way to trim the end of that sample back to, say, here, or even further in, should you wish. There is a decay here, but all that does is just like a little, on a synth, it's just a decay and release kind of knob. But okay, we can't do that. That's fine. Let's reverse the sample then, so it ends here. Nope, can't do that either. Okay, so we can't reduce the tail. We can't reverse it, so it ends here. Let's manually shift it back in time by pushing the attack. Nope, doesn't do that. It's just a fade in on the attack. Or maybe it's up here. Nope, it only goes to 4 milliseconds. So that doesn't help either. So you're limited to creating the samples outside of the plugin and then manually importing them in. And if I'm doing that, well, I'm going to use the DAW, aren't I? The point of this plugin is to improve workflow. So if I'm faffing around with samples outside of the plugin, then I don't see what this adds. But let's say this is how we want it to sound, and we have this decay here, and that's what we want. But then I want to apply some effects to the snare, to the main snare. Well, if I put them after Snapback, then that's going to affect both the snapback layer and the main snare. So I can't do that. I can put them before the snapback, obviously, that's fine. But I can't use any sends because that's going to affect both layers as well. And there's absolutely no way to put an effect on the snapback layer just by itself, or even different effects between the two layers. So what it really needs is multiple outs. It needs an output for the main snare, but also another output for the snapback layer. So then you can treat them completely separately. But then I thought, as a workaround, maybe we can create another snare layer, one channel with snapback and one channel without, and then the snapback layer, we can reduce the volume. Nope, can't reduce the volume of the main layer. So maybe there's some complex routing you can do by sending it a sidechain and then sending that pre-fader. But once again, I come back to the point that this is meant to simplify workflow. And if I'm faffing around with that, then it's not simplified at all. So let's close out of Snapback, because like I said, I'm not sold on it at all. And then we'll try and create something instead without using a Snapback. So this is how I would have done it in the past, and it's how I'm going to do it going forward also. So we have our snare here. Let's put it on something more conventional, like the 2 and the 4. And this actually reminds me, because I'm using something really quite straightforward and it's perfectly quantized on the 2 and the 4, it's fixed. It's quite easy to do workarounds like I'm doing. But I will definitely agree that if you have the timing off and it's a little bit not as consistent, shall we say, then I can see where Snapback would be useful. And I think in that case, what I would do is set it up using Snapback and then render it out as audio and then process separately. And then I also wouldn't have to deal with the latency then. Now let's duplicate that track. It's still on the 2 and 4. Let's call this one Snapback. And I think it was this sample here that we used. So now they're both playing back simultaneously, which is not what we want. But let's go into the Snapback layer and then we'll bring back the timing a little bit, or forward the timing, I should say. That sounds about right. Now we're going to add a group channel. And then we'll send the Snapback layer into the group. And on the group layer, let's add an LFO tool. Doesn't need to be LFO tool. There are loads of these type of plugins available. 1/4 is good. Let's turn this up for now. And let's have a look. I'm just going to bring this back just a bit and we'll just demonstrate a bit. So now the Snapback layer is playing earlier, as we can clearly hear. But we have the overlap into the previous snare. So let's turn down here. Let's add a bit of a release like that. And then we'll also dip this down like so. And this curve, where this is, doesn't really matter. There's a lot of room for flexibility. It can basically go all the way back to around here. Now let's play this back. And you can see that because there's no sample layer coming through in this section, it is being cut off where the other snare hits. Let's put it back to something that we like. So you can see this snare in grey here. That's what we're muting out. So this is the room for flexibility. We have all this room to put this curve up in. And let's just render that out and then import it as audio so you can very clearly see what's happening here. We have the Snapback layer, which is starting earlier, and that's completely variable based on this track delay. And as you can see, it ends perfectly where the main snare triggers. So A, we're not dealing with any latency. B, we have flexibility of the snare that we import. There's no need to chop the tail or anything like that because the DAW does all that itself. We can apply separate effects on each of these channels. We can send them to different sends and returns. And you might counter that with saying, but setting up this group and setting up this track delay was a bit of a faff. But if I wasn't doing a video, it could be done in genuinely under 5 seconds. And then it's set for the track. So, I don't know. So that's just my view on it. And just to be absolutely clear on this is just my opinion on it. Definitely go and download the demo if you think that it could still work for you. I'm not trying to convince anyone not to get it or anything like that. In fact, I'm trying to convince myself. If someone can teach me why I'm wrong, then that would be great. But yeah, just my opinion, as I said. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.